A very good evening to everyone. I hope you all are doing well. So sorry for the delay. Actually, there were some issues that were going on, but now we are on time. So, welcome back to the day 3 of our ongoing faculty development program on corporate governance, business ethics, and legal compliances in the contemporary business environment, organized by School of Law, Netaji Subhas University, in collab with SADA Law House Private Limited. Today, thank you all for staying engaged with us through the past 2 days. Your presence and participation truly makes this program meaningful. Now, it's the time to begin today's session. We are honored to have with us a very experienced and respected academician, Dr. Vinayak. Dr. Vinayaka is a principal at Ramaiah Institute of Legal Studies. He holds degree in BCom, LLB, LLM, and a PhD in Insurance Law, which he completed in 2022. He has also earned first rank and a gold medal in LLM and third rank in LLB. He has reached teaching experience in labor law, insurance law, and human rights, and has published important research comparing terrorism risk incidents in India and the USA. He has also served as a legal officer, chaired seminar, and continues to contribute actively to the legal education and research. We are truly delighted to have him here today. We welcome you, sir. Sir, the virtual floor is now all yours. You are very welcome. You can continue, sir.
Thank you for a wonderful introduction. Thank you. So, good evening to everyone. So, first of all, I would like to apologize for the delay in joining this session. Okay, due to some urgent meeting, I was held up. Okay, let us start the today discussion without wasting further time. So, the topic which I'm going to discuss with you is the legal compliance and risk management in a corporate sector. Okay, if you see in India, everything is regulated by laws, rules and regulations. So whatever you take, even a common man life is also regulated by rules and regulations. Likewise, these economic activities, business, partnership firms, or factories, or any enterprises, all those things are regulated by the laws only. So then question will arise, who has to regulate and for what purpose they have to regulate? So that is another important question which we would like to discuss with you. First of all these economic enterprises are regulated by the states in the interest of the society. If there is no regulations, there will be cutthroat competitions, there will be no compliance, and it may not be possible for any persons to carry out his profession, business, or occupations, or any economic activities on a reasonable ground or in a reasonable field. So with that objectives, under Indian Constitution, under Article 19 subclass 2, provides a very wide power to the state to regulate these types of activities, business enterprises. So by exercising the power under the Article 19 subclass 2, the state always try to regulate these economic activities. And if there is any deviation from the rules, regulations, and the norm that is prescribed by the state, then it attracts severe consequences. So that's why every corporate sectors or every person who is doing the economic activities, he must give a first and foremost prioritize to comply these legal regulations or legal rules and regulations in the interest of the society as well as interest of his own entrepreneurship. So that is the background with regarding to why these legal compliance is required, who has to make, and what purpose it has to be followed. Then next, another important concept would I like to discuss with you, the definition of legal compliance. So legal compliance refers to the process of ensuring that corporate actions, operations conform to the law, regulations, guidelines pertinent to their businesses activities. This includes various local, state, and federal statutes that detect the acceptability conduct within the industry. So it means every industry has to be follow certain minimum number of rules and regulations. So that has to be followed. That has to be made by the state. It has to be followed by those industrial entrepreneurship. So that is called as a legal compliance. And next, the question will arise: why it is important to follow these legal compliances, or why these statutory laws or regulations has to be followed by this industrialist. The first and foremost importance of following these legal compliances is it avoids any types of penalties, fines, and sanctions. So legal compliance has to be meant to be followed. If anything, if it is not followed, then it will definitely attract the penalties, and it may fines, and even it may sometimes attract to the sanction also, and sometimes other types of imprisonment, other types of punishment also, which is very severe one. And second thing is, if any economic activities or entrepreneurs who is following and maintaining the legal compliances promptly, definitely it will help to have a good reputations with respect to that particular company, and it will create some sort of trust about that particular company among the shareholders and as well as among the general public. And third thing is, these legal compliances definitely provides a one way of transparency in the eyes of public and as well as the stakeholders about that particular company. And the complying the rules and regulations which is prescribed for that particular industry or a corporate sector, it is the duty of that particular corporate sector or that particular company. So that will, we can call it as a sort of ethical business conduct. So the business has to be conducted in a ethical manner. The legal compliance will definitely amounts to nothing but following the ethical compliance only. So these are the some of the important aspects why a corporate sector has to follow the legal compliance, or they have to follow the legal compliance. And the third and the last one, why it is important to comply the legal compliances of a corporate sector is it avoids the disputes. So either dispute may be with the state, with the particular industrialist, or with the other customers, or whatever it may be. So when a company or a corporate sector is running as per the legal compliance, it will avoid to the maximum extent any sort of the dispute. That is also another important advantage, or that is another important advantage of this particular compliance of a following the compliance. So next thing is, what may be the types of the legal compliances? So these corporate sectors are regulated by the many types of law. There will be not a single law or a sole law which regulates these corporate sectors. We can come across many types of rules and regulations and enactment passed by the state legislatures as well as the central legislature, because India has adopted the federal structure. Both state as well as the central has a power to regulate these economic activities. The first and foremost regulations that regulate or act that regulate with respect to the corporate sector is SEBI regulations and RBI institutions. So these are the two important powerful authorities which regulates the corporate sectors, and every corporate sectors has to follow the SEBI guidelines as well as the RBI guidelines with respect to that. For example, in respect of especially banking sector, they have to follow and comply all the RBI requirements and the regulations. With respect to insurance sector, they have to follow the guidelines and directions issued by the insurance sector to be there in the field. If they won't follow that particular regulations framed by the RBI or with respect to insurance sector by the insurance regulatory authority, then their license can be cancelled by those particular authorities. That's why it's one type of compliance they have to do. That is a regulatory compliance. So next is corporate compliance. Corporate compliance is majorly governed by the Companies Act. So as per the Companies Act, they have to have minimum number of directors, minimum number of other bodies and other things. So that has to be complied. Then only they will be allowed to run the business. That is another thing. And apart from these two major compliances, this corporate sector has to follow the labor laws. So India, from the day of independence and onwards, there are many number of labor laws have been passed. And these economic activities includes both capitalists who invest the money, who will be considered as the owner, and other side, there will be a contribution by the laborers. So with the combination of capital and labors, the industry will run. And this labor sector has its own historical jurisprudence with respect to the labor laws. For example, there are many labor laws are there which regulate the corporate sector. For example, minimum wages act is there. According to that, it says the minimum wages has to be paid by the employer to the employee or the workers. And social security legislations are there. To run that particular industry or a corporate, he has to pay the EPF, ESI, and other statutory social security benefits. There are many other laws are there. For example, Workmen Compensation Act, Employee Compensation Act is there. Apart from that, in that particular corporate sector, he has to establish many types of committee. For example, sexual harassment, prevention of sexual harassment committees, and other types of things. So that has to be complied by the business entrepreneurs or a corporate sector owners. And apart from these three major compliances, legal compliances, one has to comply with the tax act. Either it may be direct tax or indirect tax or GST. So all those things he has to mandatorily to comply. And apart from that, if a particular corporate sector is dealing with the industries and factories and other things, then the environmental compliance is also must. Has to take an environmental clearance. Then only they will be allowed to proceed for further. Environmental compliance is also must. And apart from that, there are other contractual compliance is also very much essential. Contractual compliances is required so as to avoid the dispute and other things. He has to honor the terms of the contract. So these are some of the types of the legal compliances that has to be taken care by the corporate sector to conduct the smooth way of their business in that particular corporate sector. That is another important thing. So as we have referred, so with respect to environmental law, there are many other sub areas are there. For example, Air Pollution Control Act is there, Water Pollution Control Act is there. And apart from that, they have to follow the local authority regulations also. All those things regulate the corporate compliances. And with respect to the legal framework, as we have discussed, the Company Act 2013 is a major one. And apart from that, SEBI regulations with respect to the banking, that means listing of shares, public shares in the stock exchange board, SEBI regulation has to be followed. And with respect to Factories Act is also another important enactment which regulates the industrial sector. They have to follow that particular Factories Act with respect to the employment of the workers, the duration of the work, how long they wish to work in that particular factory in a per day, 8 hours or 9 hours. And apart from that, cleanliness of the factories, all those things, and hazardous machineries, how it has to be protected. Workers shall not be allowed to work, adolescent workers, all those regulations are there. So these corporate sector as well as industry, they have to take care of the provisions of the Factories Act 1948. That is also very, very important legislations. Apart from that, we can also see the Foreign Exchange Management Act, FEMA is there. So that is also important compliance the corporate sector has to taken care. And Goods and Sales Services Act, GST Act is there. So all those things has to be complied meticulously. Otherwise, it attract the penalty, or it may attract the sometimes sanction also, or it may lead to the cancelling of license also sometimes. So that has to be taken care by the compliance officers especially. So these are the legislative compliance one has to be taken care at the time of running the corporations or corporate sector. Apart from that, with respect to the inner management of the corporation within that particular corporate sector, that particular management has to take care about the board structure and its independency and disclosure policy and transparency. And they have to have a strong audit compliance and audit committees. They have to take care the internal aspect of that particular corporate sector. You can see that if the audit is not properly done, if the audit wing is not so strong, then that may lead to the fraud and other things. For example, in case of a Satyam computer and other things. So the weak compliance of audit norms and regulations leads to that type of fraud. So that's why that is also very, very important. Internal audit and compliance check must be routinely, it has to be done. And there must be a reporting obligation shall be there with respect to tax returns and other types of things. So that has to be taken care. So at the same time, these are the things the corporate sector has to be complied with respect to laws, rules, regulations, and other things. It may be respect to the labor matter, or it may be respect to the financial matter, or it may be respect to the internal administrative matter, whatever it may be. So some risk will be there with respect to corporate sector. So those risks shall also be linked with the legal compliances. So for example, in case of compliance risk are there. These violations of laws and regulations that may lead to sometimes the sanctions and penalties and other things, and non-filing of the GST compliances and direct tax returns and other things. That's also lead to the other types of operational risk. And apart from that, nowadays there will be another types of a risk with respect to the risk management, that is cyber risk. For example, data breach, hacking, or and somewhere attack. So all those things are also risk associated with the corporate. For example, cyber risk and other things. How it may be related to the law means, if any such type of questions is put. So then it is the duty of the corporate sector to keep all the information pertaining to their customers in a confidential way. If any information relating to the customers, if it is because of cyber attack and other things, made it to the public, then these customers can file a complaint against that particular corporate sector and they can claim the damages. That will one way leads to the financial burden, and the other way it will harm the reputation of that particular company. So that's why this cyber compliances, strong cyber team and other things compliances has to be taken care by the corporate sector. Otherwise, that leads to the financial complications as well as legal complications also. So that's why cyber risk insurance is nowadays it is booming. That is the one area it is booming. So that's why the cyber with respect to risk management, one has to take care the compliances risk. That means he has to follow meticulously the rules and regulations which is he required to be followed. And second thing, he has to take care with respect to the cyber risk. That means he has to see that there shall be a strong cyber protection team must be there. There shall not be any data breach, hacking, or other types of attack. And in case if it is happened, then how he can handle those things. For example, cyber by taking a policy, cyber risk insurance policy types of those things. Thus, he can mitigate the risk management. Basically, the risk management is nothing but the identification of a risk and assessing of a risk and mitigating of a risk and monitoring that particular risk. First, he has to try to avoid the particular risk. If it is happened, then at least he has to see that the effect of that particular risk has to be mitigated to the maximum extent. For the best example is cyber risk. First and foremost, the data breach has to be prevented by having a strong firewall and other types of mechanism, by complying with all the rules and regulations. In case if it is happened, data breaches happened, then at least he must have a backup of insurance with respect to the cyber risk, so that in case of if anything happened, the financial burden shall not be comes heavily upon that particular entrepreneur. So that is how he has to handle the risk with respect to the cyber risk management. And the next another important question that will arise is this legal compliances has to be done, no doubt about it, and this risk management has to be taken care. So risk management may be a variety types of risk. Market fluctuation is also handling of a market fluctuation, also one type of a risk pertaining to the risk management. But I'm dealing about the management of a risk which is pertaining to the legal sector especially. So who has to take care of these types of risk, legal compliances risk as well as that management risk is the first and foremost officer who is responsible to take care the legal compliances and other things is the compliance officers. It is the duty of the compliance officers to take care of that particular types of legal compliances. Either it may be with respect to regulatory authorities, or either it may be with respect to the complying with the rules and regulations, or it may be with respect to the internal administration of that particular rules and regulations. So that is the duty of the compliance officers. How he can perform his duties? He has to give a prompt advice to the board and management. And second thing, he has to ensure the proper implementation of the legal policies. So at a right time, he has to advise the management and as well as the board to comply with those sort of rules and regulations. And he has to not only advise, it is his duty to even to liaison with the regulatory bodies. So in India, there are many regulatory bodies out there. He has to liaison with those regulatory bodies. And if there is any deviation is there, he has to take care and he has to set the things in a right way. That is the role of legal officer and as well as compliance officers. So apart from that, law officers and as well as compliance officers, the auditor also plays very, very prominent role with respect to mitigating the risk pertaining to that particular management by giving having a strong internal and external audit and he has to detect the non-compliance of the certain norms, and he has to rectify those things. So that has to be taken care by the auditor and these compliance officers and the legal officers plays a very, very important role in the legal compliances of any corporate sector. That is their first and foremost duty. Then let us move to the another area. So there are many regulatory bodies are there. They will regulate this particular corporate sectors. The first and foremost authority in India is Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So that is a very, very important authority that will regulate the corporate sector. And second is Security Exchange Board of India, as I told you, SEBI. And apart from that, SEBI and Ministry of Corporate Affairs, there is another one authority is there, that is Reserve Bank of India, especially with respect to banking sector, other sectors, they used to regulate. And then apart from that, there is a Competition Commission of India is there, and National Company Law Tribunals, and SFIO. There is also another important authority. And there is a labor department also. Labor departments also, to the maximum extent, regulate the corporate sector area. And EPF authority and PF authorities are there. Apart from that, there is a factory inspectors. They also visit these industries and regulate this particular legal compliances and other things. So these are the major authorities or bodies. With respect to insurance sector, there will be a IRDA, Insurance Regulatory Board is there. Authority is there that will regulate, they frame the rules, regulations, and guidelines. Every insurance sector has to follow that particular guidelines. And apart from these major regulatory authorities, there is a specific authorities which regulate that particular sector. For example, any person who is doing a business or activities pertaining to electricity sector as a licensee, he has to follow the norms that is prescribed by the electricity regulatory authority. There is a state electricity regulatory authority is there. He has to follow and comply the rules and regulations that is framed by the, there is a KER regulatory authorities, regulations and rules and other things. As I discussed,